That truck had been sitting for a long time, not abandoned, not forgotten, just untouched. The kind of untouched that doesn't come from neglect, but from hesitation, a quiet reverence, almost. When it finally rolled into my garage, its engine rumbling with a heavy sort of patience, I could tell right away this wasn't about the engine. It never is. The man who drove it, he shut the door a little harder than necessary. Not with anger, just with a weight that seemed to settle in his shoulders. He walked around the truck once, his hand lightly skimming the faded paint. Before he spoke, it was like he was trying to remember how to explain something that didn't have an easy starting point. "I don't want to sell it," he said, his voice low, almost a confession. "But I don't know what else to do with it." I nodded. I've learned in this business that some people come in asking for repairs, but others, they come in asking for permission. Permission to let go. Permission to hold on. Permission to finally understand. The truck had belonged to his father. It wasn't a show truck, polished and pampered for weekend parades. Not a collector's piece, locked away under a cover. It was a work truck. Through and through, you could see its life story etched into its body. Scratches along the bed from years of hauling lumber and tools, a crack spreading like a spiderweb across the dash from 1,000 sunrises and sunsets. The driver's seat was shaped by years of the same routine, a perfect mold of a man who knew his purpose. This was the kind of truck that didn't get compliments at a gas station, but it never, ever failed when it mattered. This truck was more than steel and rubber. It was a classroom on wheels. His father had taught him everything with this truck. How to haul a load properly, distributing the weight just right. How to listen to the engine and diagnose a problem before it left you stranded. How to show up early and leave late. A lesson in reliability and dedication. But what his father didn't teach very well was how to talk. So most of the lessons came quietly, side by side in the cab, hands busy, words unnecessary. A pointed finger, a subtle nod, that was their language. The silence was comfortable then, filled with shared work and unspoken understanding. As he got older, though, that same silence started to feel heavier. The comfortable quiet became a cavernous space. Conversations, when they happened, became instructions. Instructions turned into expectations. Expectations, unspoken and unyielding, became a crushing pressure. And pressure, when it isn't released with words, when it isn't explained or negotiated, it turns into distance. An invisible wall built brick by silent brick. The argument happened on an ordinary day. There was no big build-up, no dramatic storm on the horizon. Just a normal Tuesday where a small frustration finally slipped past years of restraint. It was a flash fire. Things were said that weren't meant to hurt, but they did. Words that couldn't be unsaid, thrown like stones. That was the day he walked away. Not forever, he told himself, just for long enough to breathe, to find his own air. But sometimes long enough doesn't have a clear end point. Years passed. He built his own life in another town, with his own routine, his own version of success. He proved to himself, and maybe to the ghost of that argument, that he could make it on his own. But the truck stayed with his father, parked in the exact same spot in the driveway, started every single week, without fail, maintained carefully, oil changed on schedule, tires rotated. It was like a habit that could never be broken. A promise the old man kept to the machine, or maybe to himself. A quiet, weekly ritual of readiness. Then came the day his father could no longer drive. His health had faded, and the strength to turn the key was gone. The truck was passed down without ceremony. No grand speech about legacy, no heartfelt explanation, just a set of keys placed into his hand. The weight of those keys, cold and solid in his palm, somehow hurt more than any words would have. The silence was louder than ever. For years after that, the truck stayed parked at his own house. Not because it didn't run, it started right up every time he tried. It stayed parked because driving it felt like reopening something unfinished, like picking at a wound that had never properly healed. When he sat in the driver's seat, it smelled the same, a faint mix of oil, coffee, and sawdust. It sounded the same, that familiar, grumbling idle, and somehow it felt like it expected the same things from him. The weight of the past was heavy in that cab. When he finally brought it to me, all he said was that he wanted it ready. Ready for what? He didn't know. Maybe ready to sell? Maybe ready to drive? Maybe just ready for a new chapter. But I know this: people don't fix things, especially things this emotionally charged, unless something inside them is shifting, unless they're getting ready to. As I worked on the belts and the brakes, he'd stop by the garage. He started telling me small things, not about the argument, not about the years of distance. He told me about the little memories that were resurfacing. The way his father would tap the dashboard with 2 fingers when the engine ran smooth after a tune-up. The way he always checked his mirrors twice, a non-negotiable habit, before backing up. The specific routes he always took, even when they weren't the fastest, because he knew the roads and they knew him. He was remembering the man, not the argument. And those small details, the fabric of a shared life, they mattered more than the fight ever did. That's when we found it. We were cleaning out the interior, getting it ready for whatever came next. Tucked inside the dusty glove compartment, underneath old registration slips, was a folded piece of paper. It was old, worn thin at the creases, the ink slightly faded. It was a list, a maintenance log, oil changes with dates and mileage, tire rotations, notes about a faint ticking sound to watch for. Simple, practical things. But at the very bottom, in a careful, deliberate handwriting, was one last line: keep it running, even if I can't. He stared at that line for a long time. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. In that one sentence, years of silence were explained. It wasn't a command. It was a request. A hobby. A final piece of instruction from a man who'd taught with his hands. When the truck was finished, it ran just like it always had. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic. It was just reliable. He got behind the wheel and just sat there for longer than necessary. His hands were resting on the steering wheel, right where his father's had been for so many years. His breathing was slow and steady. Then he gave a single nod, more to himself than to me. That evening, he drove the truck the long way home. He didn't take the highway. He took the back roads, the ones that coiled through the countryside, past places that carried the weight of memory. And somewhere along that quiet drive, as the sun set and the dashboard glowed its familiar green, he realized something profoundly important. The truck wasn't asking him to go backward, to relive the past or regret the arguments. It was asking him to carry forward what had never been said out loud, to carry the responsibility, the reliability, the quiet dedication. A few days later, he parked it in his driveway, not hidden in the garage, not under a cover, just parked right there, ready to be used, just like it was always meant to be. When he came back to my garage a few weeks later to thank me, he looked different. Lighter. The weight in his shoulders was gone. He just smiled and said, "I finally understand him." That's all he needed to say. I've seen this enough times to know the truth. Some vehicles don't just hold memories, they hold responsibility. They hold lessons. And sometimes, fixing an old truck isn't about honoring the past. It's about accepting it, all of it, and choosing what you do with it next. If you believe that machines can carry more than just their function, if you believe that silence can still teach us profound lessons, then you're in the right place. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe, because every car, every truck, every machine that rolls in here has a story. And some of them were never meant to be sold.